Hello, welcome to Scary Thoughts, Horror, Philosophy, Culture. I'm Mark Cate.
And I'm Chad Lott.
This is episode 125. We're going to be talking about Companion, the Drew Hancock film from 2025. You can email us at whattthe, WHATTHE, at scarythoughts.org. Anything to plug?
Well, I don't know if this will be out by then, but if it is before next weekend, definitely if you're in town, come to the Unnamed Footage Festival.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be there pretty much all day Saturday.
Oh, cool.
Smoking cigarettes outside with everyone, which seems pretty good.
What, you smoke again? Oh, that's right. You smoke. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like a secret smoker.
It's so like American. It's a big secret.
Not a lot, but just enough to enjoy it.
I think every smoker would say the same. All right. Let's just get right to it. Spoilers ahead. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'd like to start talking about spoilers because this movie, if you did not know anything about it and went into it cold without having seen the trailer, would be better.
Definitely true.
Yeah, because having seen the trailer, that Iris, the Sophie Thatcher character, is the android. And there's a reveal in the film that I think would hit harder if you didn't know that.
Yeah.
And actually the only review I watched about this was this dude, Jeremy Johns, who I'm not really that familiar with. He's just a YouTube movie guy. And he compared it to, I thought really smartly, that when Terminator 2 came out, everyone knew that Arnie was going to be the hero because he was going around being like, I am the hero in this one.
Yeah.
But the scene where he like whips out the shotgun with the roses in it is like a pivotal turning point in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know he was going to be the hero, it's like it's just a better beat.
Totally.
And the trailer really suffers that.
Yeah. Funny you should bring this up. I did not see that that there was another companion in this film.
Yeah, and that's
I didn't
fun.
get it.
Like that
That's
moment's really fun.
But what's interesting is I rewatched Companion again last night with Monique, and right at the beginning I turned to her and I was like, do you know anything about this movie? And she said nothing. And I was like, nothing? And she said, well, I've seen the poster and her eyes look weird. And that's all she knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so she got the reveal. She kind of knew a bit, but what's funny is like after the reveal of her, we usually don't talk during movies, but she turned to me and she goes, wait, is that guy a companion too?
Oh, interesting.
And I didn't catch it. So I wonder if having the reveal be an actual reveal might prime you to have more questions about it, or if I shut down because I knew what was coming. I just wasn't curious about the world anymore.
Yeah. There's also the question of like, is Patrick's reveal more of a twist? Because like he becomes an even bigger threat kind of in the film, and I think Iris and Patrick represent two androids that you often see in movies. One is like the sad robot, which is obviously Iris. And then Patrick is the, basically the Mike Myers robot that just stalks you and kills you.
The murder bot.
Yeah, the murder bot. This is a fun movie is how I would describe this. Like it's just a,
really
black
is.
comedy thriller.
Despite what it's about.
Yeah, despite what it's about, despite all of the dreary AI doomerism that we're going to talk about later, this is just like a delightful film.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's also a rape revenge film, which is, it's hard to call rape revenge films delightful.
I will quibble over the whether or not, well, I guess we'll just say this right now, is like, I think that the rape you could tease out a little bit, because from Sergei's perspective, he's just using without permission this other guy's fleshlight, which is not a capital offense.
Totally. I have a lot to say about that later, so maybe we'll put a pin in this. But did you have is that where you wanted to start? Did you have another?
Yeah, just kind of like just the overall experience of watching this movie. I've been super immersed in AI and concepts, like robots in the news lately and the whole deal. I work in tech. It's like a whole thing. So I came into this movie like really excited for it. And it's just fun enough to allow me to like park that stuff. And I was able to just enjoy this movie. Yeah. And it doesn't really hit the doomerism AI stuff that's like in the news right now.
Yes.
It's more of like a classic Asimov android sort of situation.
Totally.
Like she's literally like the butter robot from Rick and Morty is kind of her deal.
Totally. I was thinking a lot about her autonomy. Mm-hmm. She's the protagonist of the movie. And so we see this through her eyes. You even sort of hinted at, she's basically a fleshlight. We have in the doomerism, in the panic around AI, there's a lot of worry about general intelligence. There's a lot of, what rights do they have, that sort of thing. And because oh my God, what's the actress's name? Sophie Thatcher, who's great. Well, because she's great and she's super charming and she is very emotive. Strangely, she's sort of the most deep and resonant character in this film.
Yeah.
We side with her very quickly. And despite her being an intelligent coffee pot, we are on her side against the humans. Obviously, we're against humans who wanted to commit murder on a human, but we're basically rooting for her almost solely. Okay, sorry to talk about sexual assault so up front, but traditionally, rape was defined culturally and legally as a crime of defilement, right? It was something that happened to a woman, and I'm talking about in the Western world, that would bring shame upon her and or her family or something like that, right? So it brings shame and dishonor. But now, in the more liberated Western world, we think of sexual assault as being a violation of someone's autonomy. We each get to have our own sexual autonomy. That might be shifting because legally that gets really clunky sometimes, but that's pretty much where we are.
Until we get Sharia law.
I was hoping for us to continue on the trajectory we're already on. But she is an autonomous being. She gets to have sexual autonomy from Sergei. And, she's autonomous. She can't communicate with other companions. She's not interconnected to a network. It's actually kind of a weird plot hole that she's not a surveillance device.
Well, she sort of is. But it's an on-device surveillance rather than a network cloud
which makes no
surveillance.
sense.
Yeah.
Like we're already there now in the future. We're going to be less so, makes no sense. So this strikes me that she is, despite being a robot, is a neoliberal subject. She is an autonomous being. She exists in the world independently, especially at the end. But at the end, it's not that she becomes a neoliberal subject because the hacker, or the guy at the company gave her an upgrade.
I considered him a hacker. We'll talk about that later, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's more that she already was, sorry, I'm using this expression over and over, a neoliberal autonomous subject. But she had these restraints put on her. She was a slave who was given sovereignty, but she's always been a sovereign being to herself.
Yeah. This is super interesting, and it brings up something I have notes about here is she's the reverse of Data from Star Trek, where Data has superhuman powers. He's like ultra intelligent, powerful, basically like a superhero, but no emotion. And then she has emotion, and all of her her supernatural robot abilities are basically restricted by the government. I mean, this movie I don't think is asking you to do this sort of deep philosophical read like Ex Machina is. But the idea is, are the emotions what give her autonomy? Because in the film itself, the emotions are just basically a tool to sort of enslave her to the dude, which I think is, in some ways, this movie's saying more about submissive dominant relationships and the emotional tie that she has that's so strong that she can hardly bear it. They described it as pain multiple times. That's just part of her programming. And so it's not like Johnny Five coming alive or whatever. It's just part of the deal. And it's interesting that the society would have created that. In some ways, it's a little bit more like Star Wars. Star Wars has this whole tradition of automatons, all their robots. They're all intelligent. They all have feelings. They all have things, but they're just slaves, and it has this sort of weird, Aristotelian thing where it's some people are just natural born slaves because they're made to be. right? So to me, that is like an indictment of the kind of world that would create that. Like to me, it's like a horror that you would create something. It's the butter robot. It's literally the butter robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just backing up to something you just said, it reminds me of, I didn't just think of this, but you touched on something. I was listening to this interview with Zizek, and he was talking about love, which this kicks off with what is essentially a love story in a sense. And for her, it is.
It's a meet cute. It's literally a meet cute.
Totally.
I love the whole idea of the drop down menu meet cute.
Oh God, it's
such a cool line.
It's so cynical. But without doing an imitation of his accent and speech impediment, he said, he's framing this as a paradox. This is the paradox of love. Love, if there's something that is free, it is being in love. You cannot be forced to fall in love. But is it as simple as that? My claim, I love when he says my claim all the time. My claim is that you never consciously decide to fall in love. If you do this, it's not true love. Falling in love never comes in the present moment. All of a sudden, you discover that you are already in love. And this can be a very harsh experience. Love can ruin your life, and so on.
And so on.
But it's your fate. You cannot avoid it. That's the concrete reality of freedom, which is often experienced at its very opposite. So you have fallen in love and you can't control it, but it's fate. You can't avoid it.
I mean, think about like how much romantic art is like you're a slave to love, like falling in love. You don't like walk into love, you fall into love. It's and you're tripping in.
Yep.
I just think that's like one of the most interesting things about this movie is the decision to like root the android's programming in this love mechanism.
Yeah.
And there's definitely like robots that are in love in other movies, that are lovesick or whatever. Like lovesick, that's another thing. It's like literally the sad thing about this robot is that she's in love.
Yeah. I think another thing about her autonomy, about not being able to have a choice of whether or not you're in love that this movie brings up is obviously this questions for her free will. Mm-hmm. But it made me think of what kind of free will we have relative to mental illness. Mm-hmm. And the way I'm thinking about it through this film is she has programming, and the programming has restraints. And you could almost think of like she is a regular person who has these mental illnesses that impede her ability to manifest some basic things in her life, like getting to choose when she wants to have sex, getting to choose when she reports on the weather, getting to choose love of her own free will, even though Zizek contradicts that. It made me think of the way mental illness can almost, it's this back and forth metaphor. Is it like a programming error? Is it bad coding? It seems quite similar to be restrained. Like, how free are you really? Even if you know you have a mental illness.
Yeah. I mean, this butts up into your boy Sam Harris's whole free will thing where it's like, are you just molecules bouncing around in this sort of, indeterminate materialistic sort of deal? But the thing that people always run into philosophically that is like a counter argument is love. Like that's the thing that you're like, well, what about love? Like that's, it's almost a cliche to even say it. And for me, like somebody who's so salty, it's hard to even say this out loud, but it kind of is the most important thing. It's the thing that affects the most in your life. Like your response to loving or not loving people will likely drive more decisions in your life than even like a severe illness or your economic situation. Like poor people fall in love, sick people fall in love. And like,
Yeah, I was having this funny, we'd all had drinks, so nobody was being rational. So I'm not calling someone out for an inconsistent argument, but they were kind of talking shit about Emily in Paris. And like, I don't need another bunch of fucking rich, privileged people watching them fall in and out of love or something like that. And I was like, every culture has love songs, all of them, every one of them. And it's like, you just erased Motown.
Yeah, that's one of the things like this, so like this whole sour like cat lady thing, that's kind of in the air, or even the spiritual opposite, which is the incel, which is those two sort of things are so obviously distasteful because of the lack of love, you know, and
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, and it seems like a good goal for anyone. Like maybe, you know, you can't always love the one you want. You got to love the one you're with or whatever.
Yeah.
But like a good overall goal would be, can you be more lovable?
Yeah.
Like, can you be a person that can be loved and love other people? And it sounds like, look, man, all my notes are about AGI doomerism. So this is an odd tangent to be on. But, you know, one of the things that this movie does, I think that's really interesting is the love moments when like the meet cutes and stuff are very sweet and charming and wonderful, but also kind of fake.
True. You know, something I'm sort of thinking out loud. This might fall apart as I say it, but I don't know, if I was like not a therapist, but an advice giver, I think if I was talking to young men, I think a really good solid piece of advice that is easier said than done is like, try to become the man she wants you to be. And that's not about subsuming your identity or fake. Well, you can fake it till you make it, but like, that's not about disappearing who you really are and becoming someone else's expectation of you. It's more like, allow this other person that you care about. She has potentially high expectations of you. Meet those high expectations. It's worth it. Let it be an inspiration. Let it be the wind beneath your wings.
Yeah,
right?
man. I mean, you can't help but like get into these love song cliches, and the best songs are love songs, like the ones that stand the test of time. You know, even the song in this movie, the boys.
I have so much to say about.
I have a lot
song.
to say about it
Okay,
too.
good.
But it is like a song of longing.
Yeah.
You know, and being on the outside, and like it's a great song. But oh wait, what were we saying? I totally.
Wind beneath.
Fuck. Oh my God, I've been completely thrown off my train of thought.
Can I finish my thought, and then maybe
please.
you'll remember where you were? My thinking out loud about this is that one of the evil cliches about especially thriller action movies is that so many of them start with Die Hard. You know, wife kicked him to the curb. He goes and like punches a bunch of bad people and she takes him back. We don't see him doing any of the work of being a better husband.
Bro,
he just
walking on glass is a lot of work.
It's so hot. But it's a bad trope of action movies. Like, here's a man who was a shitty husband or boyfriend. Then he goes through a crucible, and then for some reason, the woman is like, I love you, and takes him back. And that's fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
However, like it's a trophy that the man gets for punching bad guys. But there's a little part of that I dig, which is he became value added.
Yeah, you're rescuing the princess from the castle. You know, like that's what you're up to. And I remember what I was going to say.
Well, you're proving your worth as a person.
Yeah, you're showing in this like micro environment that you're the kind of person that can like walk through fire to make this happen. Obviously, you probably go home and you're still a piece of shit or whatever. Like, you know, I want to see like Die Hard like 6 weeks later after the like the post hijacking rescue.
He's just not mowing the lawn
after the glow wears off. He's playing fucking Call of Duty all day. It just doesn't work. But I was going to say, you know, this whole idea of like the higher aim of becoming your most fuckable self is kind of the point of the surprisingly good book, The Way of the Superior Man. And
I don't know that one.
It's, you know, it's definitely like manosphere adjacent and has a little bit of that stink to it. But I would say it's actually really about like, you're not just trying to get shredded and for like these narcissistic American Psycho reasons. It's so that you can be someone who can be loved and like bestow that on somebody and like raise their life up too. It's like this it's almost like this sort of like servant version of it or something. You know, you're doing it for this higher purpose, which is your connection with this other person, not to like bang 40 hoes.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Did you think of what you were?
Well, that was
totally it. Okay.
The other thing I was thinking about the tangent I was going to go on is back to the drop down menu meet cute. That's kind of the state of the world, right? Like you have Hinge, you have Grindr, you have whatever, and then like you can go to the rock climbing gym, you can go to a movie. This sort of very algorithmically managed world we have has created this world of drop down meet cutes, or even the way, you know, preferences are filtered online. Like my wife and I would not have ever met because of my height. I am much shorter than
Right.
she is. And so
Right.
that would have never been a thing. And, we've been together almost 25 years and things are great.
Totally.
So is it just different or is it worse?
Yeah. This makes me think of something I texted you about, which is the company in this movie is called Empathics. And you and I've had a couple of conversations about the enshittification.
Yeah.
Where did that word come from?
So it was the word of the year for a bunch of dictionaries, I think last year.
Okay.
And it comes from just broad tech criticism. And because a video I watched recently stopped for a moment to define it, I think we might do that. It's basically the tendency of especially tech products to get worse and worse over time.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to just squeeze every drop of fucking money out of it and try to squeeze every amount of engagement out of you.
I would add to that, which is possibly also bureaucratic. Sorry, I don't have good language for this. Maybe you have better language for it. Everybody's got to prove their worth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you work for Apple, the best way to prove that your department shouldn't be terminated is if you're always coming up with shit and cramming it into Apple products.
Yeah.
And so most Apple products they're constantly moving things around into worse places. They're constantly shifting their priorities in ways that nobody asked for, that just makes it confusing. But someone has kept their job another year by moving that thing for nobody's apparent benefit.
Yeah, you're certainly hitting on one aspect of it. Like the general, like once again, the boogeyman here is like hypergrowth capitalism. Like the thing has to grow and be more profitable every year. And so what you're talking about is scope creep. So you're just making features for the sake of features, and a product just gets shittier over time. Like a great example of this is just Microsoft Office. There's just so much useless shit in Microsoft Office now that makes it irritating. Slack is getting Slack used to be like a delight to use. It is now starting to suck. The example that I think most people will just understand is if you've been around for any period of time and you've been using Google, like Google is a perfect example of enshittification. It's just worse than it used to be.
Totally.
Like you're not finding what you want. There's ads everywhere and it's so nerfed and shitty. And they're just trying to constantly make more and more money out of different ways. It's also eating up all your data, being used to train LLMs, which sucks, large language models, which is the real world word for artificial intelligence, which is more of a marketing term. And another one that people probably in the Bay Area would know, or really anywhere, is Uber. Uber used to be quite cheap compared to a cab. And so like when it was less than a cab and came to you with the push of a button, it kicked cabs in the dick. But their business model was destroy cabs, so later on we can raise the price. So that's when you look at your Uber and you're like, fucking $100.
Yeah.
What? That's enshittification at work.
So if we overlay enshittification onto the companion, into empathics, would these companions be free if they were data mining? And then would that make them worse performers? And I think that makes me think of something really grotesque, like just think of your experience with every fucking tech product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And think just, for example, you open up Spotify. I've been using Spotify for a long fucking time and I pay for it. When I open Spotify, I am confronted with an avalanche of music that not only I don't care about, I actually hate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my front page.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to push this shit at me that I don't actually want. If I'm listening to records and I'm like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to listen to, I walk over and it's what I want.
Yeah.
When I open Spotify, the first thing I see is a ton of shit that I hate.
Mm-hmm.
I hate Charlie XCX. It's garbage music.
Yes.
But that's what I have to get through to get to what I want. So if I've got a companion, does she always want to give me this weird, obscure, fetishy hand job first before she can fucking just do the thing I actually like doing? Does that make sense? Like,
which is the rusty trombone for our listeners.
Wow, that was a very nostalgic potty mouth thing to say. I haven't heard that in a while. Wow, that's so old. Like maybe it's funny again?
Yeah, it's always been funny, but
I don't know if it's always been funny. But you know what I mean? Like essentially she's there for like cuddling and sex. That's her primary function.
Yeah.
But if she's actually driven by the data mining and shitification just creeps in, is she always going to first want to push some weird agenda that I then have to get through to actually have sex the way I want, have dinner the way I want, have conversation the way I want, right?
Well, if you think about her as a product, I would say for my own purposes, like she's kind of got her own thing going on and she seems like she loves him and she cooks and cleans and stuff.
Yes.
Like that's a great product in my mind for probably a lot of people. I mean, to the point where like the slightly older version of it, that he's even self-aware. Patrick's aware that he's a robot, which is kind of interesting. And then Eli's like, I just fucking love you, man. And that moment is kind of tragic because even though Eli's a piece of shit, they are in love. They show that it's possible. You know, it's like fully consensual. They're both all in. And, you know, in the rules of this universe, Patrick's aware enough to reciprocate that feeling. Yeah. I think if you were to think about like ways in which Iris would be enshittificated, or whatever that, how you would say that. I mean, imagine you're talking to her and she's just telling you shit that some company thinks you should buy all the time. Yeah. Like, hey, your shoes are trash. You should get the new Sambas. Or like that would be one thing. Or she's just like giving you a complete ear beating about why like whatever political candidate is the one to vote for. Like just all these hellscapes. Just imagine anything that your eyes are seeing when you're doom scrolling on Instagram. Like, but you have a human barking it at you,
which is a bad marriage.
It's a bad marriage. Yeah.
Right.
Like it's two
That's
people,
exactly what that looks like.
Yeah. And then I'm, you know, like it's like two people blasting their special interests at each other, you know, all the time without any sort of consideration for the back and forth. Yeah. I mean, there's also, you have to upgrade to get 5 more hand jobs this week. Like that sort of thing. Right. And it's kind of funny. Like right now, NVIDIA and a bunch of other companies are rolling out their autonomous real world robots. Like these robots, that's the new thing is like, you know, I'll talk more about like how AI is actually failing in a minute, but you know, robots are the hot shit right now and they're all fucking fake. If you think these robots like work like they do in the keynote speeches, you're a fucking moron. It's all vaporware, but they all show them like doing cute stuff or like vacuuming. Like, dog, people are gonna fuck these robots first. Like that's literally the first. Like that's what people want, you completely. Know. And that's what Josh. He turns on the robot and like within like 5 minutes he's like getting down with it. Yep. And like that's like if that's the product you want, that's fine, you know. Yeah. But there's so many ways. Look at all the ways that a person could be made shitty by capitalism, you know.
So many ways.
I mean, if you think,
No, go ahead.
I mean, if you think about Sergei, the Russian character in this movie, his girlfriend is she's like an enshittified human, you know, because she's so greedy that she wants to murder him. Yeah. With her friend that she's friend zoned. Yeah.
Actually, if we go further back, further with shitty people and Josh, the movie sort of implies that like, these escorts, these companions would be especially appealing to sociopaths like Josh. But I think that their dissemination, if they were in the world, they would actually increase Joshness in the world. You know, the way I'm kind of making a parallel here. Social media was supposed to connect the world more than ever before, and actually the outcome was the opposite. Yeah. Dating apps, I know some people who like met on Grindr and got married, so my criticism is limited.
We salute you.
Yep, absolutely. But for the most part, they do not actually service, well, you know, okay, most tech companies don't do the thing that they say they do, right?
They're just collecting your data is what they're trying to do. That's the end game of it, your data and your money.
But what's happened with social media is it's made the world more fractious. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine there's anybody left on Earth who doesn't see that plainly, unless they're making an excuse to continue their addiction to social media. And it seems that if these companions were running around, there would be a parallel issue that you're dealing with a fabrication of a human something that does not actually possess empathy, that has this very weird, skewed tech-based agenda, no matter how much they're programmed to pretend that they don't, they always will. I mean, I'm being a little bit metaphysical. There's something to being human that AI cannot and never will replicate. Yeah. It can pass the Turing test. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about deep human connection.
Yeah, I think this is where I think in the real world, you're 100% correct about that. And if this were to happen here, that would 100% work like that. In the world of the film, this is where it gets sort of like borderline plot hole-ish, is these robots really do love and have autonomy and stuff like that. So in this world, it's kind of like, okay, well, we know that there's more than one version of her out there, like literally the same model.
We see one on the end.
Yeah, at the end. So people would for sure know about these different models, and you would be able to see them on the street, and you'd be like, oh, there's the the whatever. And then I think certainly people who couldn't afford them would judge the people who have them. Definitely. And then you see in the film that the woman is like, oh, you kind of threatened me. And, if you don't know what's going on, you're like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. And then you're like, okay, but she's also a shitty woman. So she's the kind of woman that would be replaced.
Right.
Like that type of girl, like would be like a gold digger, would be out of business if these robots existed.
Maybe. But I can also see a world in which if they came on the market, people be experimenting with them, right? People check them out. And I think very quickly they're potentially, this is my movie that I think would be pretty realistic. There might become an equilibrium where the type of person who is not willing to tolerate a real human woman is the type of person who would rent a companion. And that use of a companion, because of the deep, deep asymmetry in that relationship, it will increase the terribleness of the person they are. Like when we hear the technicians talking, like, oh, some of them type up at the basement.
It's Westworld.
Right.
Yeah.
What's weird about doing that to a companion is you're not just playing the most dangerous game. You are playing the most dangerous game with someone who loves you. And so it's not that you are playing out your American Psycho fantasies freely. You are playing out intimate partner violence fantasies.
Yes.
Because there's an inherent asymmetry of power between the user and the companion, I think it would increase the user's propensity for abuse. You don't have to talk nicely to the car. She thanks the car, right? Yeah. We don't thank our cars. We don't thank Siri. You don't have to thank your companion. And if you're not thanking your companion, do you just shove it out of the way? Do you let doors slam in its face? Do you and suddenly you're becoming like, in what way are you compelled to treat it well? It's going to love you no matter what.
Yeah. You're kind of the bad kid in Toy Story.
Yeah.
And then I have like a lot of notes about this. So Josh, the main bad guy in this, he is like the best example of like the weak men make hard times Bugman trope, where like the whole like weak men make hard times. Like, so he's literally a weak man. Because he is like really done no work to get the love other than pay for it.
Right.
And he can't even afford to buy it. He has to rent it, which is even sadder. And, like love is a subscription service. And, so I think you would have like these really sad robots around and these like extra violent people around that were, like abusing them. And I think that would completely destabilize society.
I think so.
Yeah, because you would also you'd have a lot of people like white knighting for these robots too, like justifiably, you could see like, hey, you should just be my robot friend and we'll hang out, Could you imagine like you play D&D with these robots? It'd be great. Like just like set up, it kind of becomes like the more humane thing is just sort of more like Mayberry type shit, But like the sex robot, I mean, they're literally designed to be fuckable in this movie. So,
yeah.
It's also the way that they seem to work is a little bit more, it's not like the AGI paperclip threat. Like they're in this world. You got to take them in. You got to get them filled up with eye fluid. There's techs. You'd maybe lease them, which is like, as anyone knows, the most expensive way to own a sex robot is to lease it instead of buying it outright. It hasn't destabilized the world of this film very much.
Yeah, although there is a sort of paperclip. Does everybody know what that even refers to?
Probably not. Like, do you want to explain it, or should I do it real quick?
You got it.
Okay, so Nick Bostrom, he wrote a book called Superintelligence, which is sort of the ur-text of AI doomerism, or one of them anyway. And the scenario is something like this: like an artificial intelligence would become self-aware. Once it becomes self-aware, it can improve itself exponentially, and really quickly it just becomes a god and takes over all of our systems. And that could be cool if it likes us, or it could be very uncool if it wants to do just something odd and perverse, such as maximize the number of paperclips in the universe. And so then it could do stuff like decide like, oh, vegetation and oxygen is actually going to slow down my paperclip factories, and it would just wipe out everything that does not involve making paperclips. And the paperclip is just a metaphor for a thing that would hurt humans that the AI wants to do, that we would be able to stop it from doing.
Weird. I remember that it was, if you were to tell an AI the prompt, make paperclips, and then the AI makes paperclips at any cost.
So it's kind of the same thing. Like the only difference, like in that scenario you're talking about, the human has like sort of fucked up wishmastered the situation,
yes.
Which is one version of it, but the other version is that it has just decided that for the end result is that there's paperclips and no humans.
Okay, so when I said there's a bit of a paperclip issue in this film, I was talking about my version of my understanding of the problem, which is when Josh turns to Boybot and says, "Stop her," and he just stabs her.
Yeah, it's like that's monkey paw shit, Wishmaster stuff. Yeah. Before we get too deep into the AI, the gravity of the AI doomerism, let's talk about the boys and dancing.
Okay.
You said you had a bunch of notes on the song.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant in the flashback when the guys are dancing.
Yeah, for sure.
Cute.
Yeah.
No, my thing was just about, it wouldn't be a Scary Thoughts episode if I didn't bitch about how the soundtrack included songs from the 80s. That song is now 45 years old or something like that, for God's sake. Like, why are we still doing this? But something I found interesting about the use of that song that was very appropriate is the song is about, it's written by Book of Love, and they were a band based in New York in the early 80s, around when Boy Bar used to exist. And that song is about her experience of hanging out with all her friends that are all gay men, and she goes to the boy bar and they don't let her in, so she's waiting around outside.
We don't serve your kind here.
They don't. Back when you could kind of do that in America. You can still do that in Germany and Holland and a lot of other places. But yeah, so it's a song about her waiting outside, like, I want to be where the boys are, but I'm not allowed. So you brought it up earlier already. Just, it's a song about this alienation of like, I want to be one of you, but I'm on the outside. That's all.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a beautiful choice.
I think, it's a great song, and it's
incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
I love that band.
Fun to. I'll probably listen to it like 4 times today.
Oh, cool.
I had forgotten about it as a song, and I feel like it's in another. It has to have been in another beloved movie, because I feel like there's like some sort of cinema resonance I was picking up. That
I mean, its approach to synths, I'm being very nerdy, but is not that far from Goodbye Horses.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
It's got they exist in the same plane.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for bells too.
I know.
It's just like xylophones and shit. I don't know what it is. It must be something deeply human. I mean, there's a reason why we put them in our churches.
Yeah.
I thought it's a production design choice that I thought was really interesting. I don't know that it necessarily means anything, but it's a CD. And a really high-end, obviously, Russian oligarch, dirt farmer sound system.
But he does have a vintage amp. That amp
Yes.
is probably from the 70s.
Yeah, I mean,
And the CD player is probably a Harman Kardon from the 90s.
yeah, like one of those ones that like gets the full sound out of the CD somehow.
Whatever that means.
I don't know. But CDs are kind of like on the comeback. I don't know if you know that, but they're becoming sort of, they're just back. But
So
I don't
weird.
think they deserve to, because they don't do anything better. I don't know, maybe, but they certainly sound better than Spotify does. So maybe there's, I don't know. You think?
Well, I don't know how far to go down this.
Let's go down, like digress.
Well, so CDs are basically on par with a 16-bit WAV file, and YouTube can stream better than that. Whether it does all the time is another question. Someone might argue with this, but like streaming's getting pretty high quality, but it's not dependable.
Yeah.
It always depends. Your devices are always trying to optimize for streaming speeds and compressing the audio to allow for bandwidth. It can be really high quality sometimes.
An experience, a forbidden experience that I had recently is I just listened to Kanye West's new album Bullies that he released at the end of his racist tirade. And it sounds really fucking good on YouTube. I had like some nicer headphones on, and probably what you're talking about, and maybe it'll sound shitty today when I go home and my wife's watching Netflix.
I wonder.
I wonder. But like last night when I listened to it, I was like, man, the production of this sounds, it's one of the most, I mean, I can't totally recommend it because Kanye's just gone down the dark path, but it is really interesting, and whatever he did in the studio, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has the access to talented people with good tools, so there it is. Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? We'll table Kanye for now.
For now.
Something else with the Boys song is I love dancing in movies. I fucking love it.
Really?
Yeah, I know some people don't like it. I'm always a fan of a dance number in a movie.
Oh, a number. So not just like the beginning of Blade.
I would count that.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. Because I would consider what he does art.
Sure. Oh, so you mean choreography, dance choreography.
I like dance choreography in films, even when you're not, especially when you're not expecting it. Like if a movie has like a really fun, like for example, this kind of mediocre movie, The Skeleton Twins, that Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader are in it, and Luke Wilson. It's about these two siblings having a hard time with each other. There is a dance scene in it that is very sweet, and when I think about like I think dancing is it's not even a unique thing, like birds kind of dance or whatever, but it's a thing that you can become like an object of desire just because of your dancing ability.
Yeah.
Like Saturday Night Fever, for example.
Yeah.
And then your ability to dance is, there's whole cultures that dance awesome and are renowned for it.
They prioritize it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was funny that the dancing in this film is like kind of comedic. It is very stiff and goofy. And even in the two versions of the dinosaur Halloween Meet Cute, they're both like sort of out of sync and weird. And I was thinking like how hard it would have been to work on that, or is it a decision for them to be sort of out of sync and weird? And I was wondering if it was referencing the really famous dance scene in Ex Machina. Oh, because they're like in perfect sync.
Or Megan.
And Megan
no, the sync thing. I see.
Yeah.
I don't remember that in Ex Machina or whatever.
Yeah, he's like dancing with the Asian robot.
Okay.
And like it's kind of a thing, and he turns on the disco lights in his house and stuff, and it's kind of a moment. But yeah, I like robots, and like that's one of the like people do the robot, and then actually recently, Boston Dynamics has a new robot that could probably fucking murder you. And its video is it breakdancing. So there's just this sort of this interesting thing about like, using dance is a metric for how awesome a robot is. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything there. It's just kind of more just like observational points, data points.
Just reflecting on dancing as a thing. I'm finding more research where having a regular discipline of going out dancing or whatever that can mean, dancing regularly, has better effects on your mental health than a lot of pharmaceutical interventions.
Well, I believe it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it will probably change nobody's pattern of pharmaceutical consumption.
I mean, but what about like raves where you're doing both. You're
the
taking
best.
I mean, it's kind of is like the best, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, sober people.
Yeah.
Okay. If we can talk about technology for a minute.
Okay. This is my jam.
It's going to get real dark. I've been thinking a lot. It's probably been listening to what Ezra Klein's been doing lately. America's in this position where we don't build things anymore. It seems to be right or wrong in application. Part of the Trump, what he's trying to accomplish in certain ways is make more stuff made here. We can't build high-speed rail. We can't build homes. We can't build, everything's so expensive. There's so many impediments. Every system is broken. We just don't build things. And so American ingenuity, which I believe in, I advocate for, but it used to apply to, let's build a park, let's build a bridge, let's build a freeway, let's build a train, let's build a computer. Well, there are too many impediments to building things in America now. So the American ingenuity is now all in tech. So it's all virtual, for better or for worse. But the problem is tech has a really hard time monetizing itself. Like what you're saying about Uber, it's an idea. Can't remember the terminology. Well, loss leader, but it seems that most tech is loss leadering. And it seems that the inflated value in the tech sector is just this thing that nobody learns from. It just continues and continues. So it just seems that this is a way that, well, neoliberal capitalism is sort of falling apart. And I'm not saying this is the end of capitalism. I mean, this is a flaw in the code. We've gotten here, and now tech seems to be the most lucrative form of capitalism in America. And it's kind of depends on deeply false value.
Yeah,
to prop it up.
It is like the thing that America has that no one else has. Like the top 90% of the tech companies are all in America. So it is this exceptional American thing. I mean, even though you think math and coding can be done anywhere, people even to this day still start companies in San Francisco. There was this sort of, during COVID, all these, libertarian tech guys were like, fuck it, we're going to Texas. It kind of isn't working, like you get, Joe Rogan became the warlord of Austin, Texas, but that kind of was it. It's already receding back to San Francisco. There's just something about here. I don't know what it is. And then the big thing now is artificial intelligence. And there's this race, and it's literally like an arms race. And their argument is sort of like, you can't tax us. You have to give us everything we want. Otherwise, China's going to beat us to it. And then there'll be Chinese paperclips. Not American paperclips. Right. It's dark, man. I don't see, in Gary Stevens' point is, unless we really get serious about balancing this shit and like taking it back, it's going to get worse. And we're going to end up, it's going to be like Mumbai in Oakland, Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my tirade.
Yeah.
I went all over the place. I've been downloading all this shit and thinking about it for like 2 years now. It's like,
Maybe a place to go from there is, I believe you have something to say about how these sorts of AI dystopian narratives actually benefit the tech sphere and AI companies.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, I mean, so there's one of the things that's interesting about these tech companies is they're not just producing tech products that are like destabilizing things. They're also, they're stocks, so there's this growth incentive to make these things so huge, and people want to buy low, sell high. And the thing that people are we're placing a lot of bets on lately is, everybody saw ChatGPT and they're like, holy fuck, you can write my emails from my bullshit email job for me. Obviously this is going to be huge, and it seems to be slowing down a little bit. And so now they're like, oh, well, maybe you can't just throw infinite compute and data at this shit because we've already scraped the internet. So what else is there? And then there's only so many chips, and we don't have the power of the sun to run them. Right. It's actually kind of like an environmental holocaust to run these things.
Is it?
Yeah, dude.
I know nothing about this. I just hear about it, but I don't really get it.
Your request to do a rap parody of Harry Potter lyrics or whatever is like the equivalent of running a light bulb for 25 minutes.
worth
one
it.
prompt.
So worth
it might be worth it. Who knows? I don't know. And then, the argument for if you're a tech guy, like if you're into this stuff, you're like, well, DeepSeek, which is the Chinese version of OpenAI, is way more efficient now. So if you're
for how long?
I don't know. If you're it's like if you're an optimist, it's getting better. If you're one of these rising capital raises all ships, I don't know. But I'm not that kind of dude anymore. I don't think I ever was. I think I just wanted to get mine, is how I would describe my politics.
Yeah. If we can bounce into the movie to sort of go
we
further
should,
down this. Well, I'm tying it back to where
movie,
we are, but the characters in this movie, Josh and terrible lady friend,
yes,
they can't commit murder themselves, so they enlist hack. Both companions end up committing murder on their behalf, which is kind of pretty much what drones are like, essentially. And it kind of made me wonder isn't this what Palantir is up to, in a sense? Displacing... no, I guess not. I guess Palantir is just about the information end. They're not directing drones.
Well, they are.
Are they?
Yeah, for sure. So,
okay.
I mean, what Palantir is basically a data company, and they can make a profile of, let's say...
a data company that was designed to make Amnesty International pissy.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know about Palantir, they're sort of in the shadows a little bit, but Alex Karp is an egomaniac, and he's just wrote a book that's kind of, that would be worth reading. It's called The Technological Republic. I thought it was interesting. His thesis is basically tech should be serving the nation's goals. And his critique of tech is actually pretty interesting. It's basically hey, instead of making more stupid filter photo stuff and only doing advertising, maybe we should make stuff that actually makes America more secure. And his whole thing is more secure because they're basically a defense company. But, maybe half the people at Facebook could have gone off to cure cancer instead of making some new drop-down menu for your bullshit. There's his thesis is that there's kind of this brain drain into these major tech companies, and they're not really producing useful stuff. They're producing valuable stuff to the market, but it's not useful for the national security. And then, he has another criticism, which is that within these companies, these people are peaceniks, and they don't want to work on Google, for example, had Project Maven, which was their drone technology that allowed people to be killed in other countries with data. The Google walkout, where there was 20,000 people walked out of Google, it was directly because of Project Maven. And I'm sympathetic to the walkout, because a lot of these people are oh, we're just doing advanced maths. This is amazing. And they give us free kombucha. And then they find out that the advanced maths is being used to kill somebody. But if you had seen Good Will Hunting, you know what the fucking advanced maths is for. There's a whole monologue about that, that's really all it's for, that and trading,
Yeah. Okay. This just struck me. This is another, I'm thinking out loud, so this might crumble on impact, but another thing I've said on this podcast before, but I tend to believe that anytime I am not in the act of engaging in physical violence, it's because someone else somewhere else is doing it on my behalf.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to believe that it's because I and the people around me are enlightened and we are above violence, and my intellect and my reason are why I get to live a peaceful existence surrounded by my elite West Coast community. But in fact, it's because I pay into this incredibly violence-centric machine that allows me to pretend that violence doesn't exist, generally speaking. And by extension, what you were just talking about makes me think, if we think of, technology as an extension of the body and computers are an extension of the mind, that anytime I'm not having to think about the possibilities for violence, it's because I'm paying someone else to run AI to consider the metrics of the possibility of violence being committed on my person.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, one way of saying it is like the reason why you get to call Elon Musk a Nazi on Instagram is because your grandfather killed Nazis in Holland.
Yes.
You know, and so that's the thing that has to have happened. And Alex Karp's, you know, Palantir's sort of like secret claim to fame is that their technology allowed bin Laden to be found. And, you know, if you... fuck that guy, you know, like, like I for one am glad that they allegedly shot him in the face and dumped him in the ocean. You know, I don't think that's a super controversial take, but, you know, then they also talk about how their technology has, this is, to me, it could be marketing, it could be real, but like there have been significant terrorist actions that have been stopped in Europe with Palantir's technology.
Yeah.
And, this is the plot of the Dark Knight, like how much security and data collection do you want there to be on behalf of your security? And just because you like have a walkout at Google, and you participate in it, like for sure your sort of like immediate conscience can be kind of cleared. But, you're also living in a country that is protected by violent people on your behalf. And
yes.
you're complicit, basically, no matter how much waving of the Palestinian flag you wave around, like you are an American and you pay taxes to it. Like, this libertarian territory where it's like, oh, I'm forced to, and I don't want to kill people. But like you are part of that system, whether you like it or not. And like, what do you do about it? I don't know. I mean, I put a bunch of money in Palantir and made like $8,000 last month. Like, so like I have no room to talk,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to the movie and this further, these robots get hacked to become murder bots.
Yeah.
But let's think about the world that this movie exists in.
Yeah.
If those robots are that easy to hack, no matter what the government regulations, there are murder bots fucking everywhere. And if there are murder bots fucking everywhere, we have to assume that this world is swarming with murder bots.
Yeah.
Like if some dumb ass, Josh, can turn his sex bot into a murder machine, that means it's game on. And if America has so many regulations that they don't allow for it, China and Russia don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
so they'll have them.
Yeah,
they'll be like, America, yeah, okay, you can have your sex machines. We have an army.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the sort of details like this are, I mean, obviously this is a silly movie, so you can't get too
Which
deep into the weeds.
Fucking love.
Yeah,
so,
like, for example, like, in this world, $12 million is enough to stage a complex murder.
Yeah.
I wouldn't murder somebody over $12 million now.
Right. Right.
There is a number. There's certainly a number that I would shoot you for.
Chad, no. You know what? I bet if you said that number, I'd kind of respect it.
It's lower than you think. But it's over $14 million.
It means a lot.
But, like, it's also prosperous enough that this like one bedroom loser can afford this extremely high tech piece of machinery.
Yeah.
And it seems prosperous enough that like a dirt farmer can be an oligarch.
Right.
And so it seems to be that the world is pretty chill in general in this scenario.
Yeah.
And so there's probably not like, Russian robots murdering Ukrainians in this world or something,
right.
And this is what I think makes it like kind of like an old school sci-fi, is that the sci-fi elements are sort of contained into this tiny little what if world that doesn't like trickle out and go crazy. Because if there were these robots in the world and you were to like Black Mirror this shit, it would be a totally different thing. It would maybe look more like Blade Runner, for example.
Yeah, and if this world existed and you were a cop, you wouldn't be the Mayberry cop that we see in this movie. Just lets a guy walk straight up at him and subdue him before he fires.
Yeah, he's practically Dewey from Scream.
Yeah. Perfect.
And it's actually a really great, like, it's a kind of cool little gory moment, Speaking of gory moments, the wine opener murder at the end is great. It's a fun way to kill somebody, really, but it also doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't work.
Why could she not pull the trigger but she could stab him in the head with the wine. Am I like completely missing something? Is it? Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, the fact that she kills Sergei at all, even though it's justified, means that these robots don't operate under Asimov rules. Like, the Asimov law of robotics, the three laws.
Is it basically the Prime Directive?
No. Well, I mean, you could probably say.
But for robots?
So these are the 3 laws of robotics. Number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Number 2, a robot must obey the orders given it by the human beings, except when such orders would conflict with the first law. So that could be sort of why they can't say, go kill him.
Right.
And third, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So that's the problem. Like, these aren't Asimov laws because she wouldn't be able to kill Sergei even if Sergei was trying to kill her. Like, so there's something kind of else. It could be simply sloppy writing is happening. Or is there some consequence in the world of this? Like,
right.
Does the ability to love give you the ability to murder? Which makes me think of that like Chris Rock thing. Like, you've never really loved anyone if you didn't want to kill them.
Wow. Something that this movie points to is it points to the dangers of AI, even though we're on the companion side.
Yeah, we're on the old school robot side of this sort of thing.
Yes,
yeah.
But it does pose these questions about the dangers of AI that a lot of other movies talk about. But it gives us, okay, this is the potential danger of a rogue robot.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, artificial intelligence, the real threat is that it is not about independent rogue artificial intelligence agents. It's about systemic violence.
Yeah, like everyone loses their job at once. Like that's a potential, like in the thought experiment side of AI discourse, that is a potential thing. And then the answer is Andrew Yang going, give everybody DoorDash. Like, it's like, it's a pretty weak thing, So what do you do with, an entire population of obsolete people? Like countries that have too many obsolete men are a problem.
Yeah.
Like much less
everybody. America is one of those countries to a degree. I was also thinking of real violence, like if AI suddenly, to think of what if one robot went rogue, like Murderbot, the Martha Wells book series. It's great. I'm sure it'll be a TV series someday soon because it's so compelling. The independent robot, it's scary. Oh my God, what if a robot turned evil? But really, AI is a system that is decentralized, and if we're talking about bots, it can enact systemic violence.
Yeah.
It's not about independent rogue agents. It's about that this is what it does.
Yeah, it'll Skynet you. It'll get, it's not just the T-800 walking up to fuck your shit up. It's taking
slowly.
It's taking over the codes of the nuclear codes to nuke and kill everyone. Yeah. Judgment Day.
Yeah. Oh, what else?
We should cover Terminator 2 one day. It's such a great movie.
I feel like we mostly are right now.
Yeah.
There are a couple of T2 references in this movie. Yeah. There's the hand.
The hand for sure. Yeah.
What else was there? Shit, I read
about
the
male android's named Patrick, which is named after the actor that plays the T-1000.
And he's dressed as a cop for the second half of the movie.
Yeah,
that was it. This could be an anthology series. Wouldn't it be great if this was a TV series where every week it was another sex bot gone wrong situation?
Yeah.
There's a lot to explore here.
Fucked by robots on Netflix.
Write it up, people. Oh, shoot. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm down to my scrap notes. Are you, did we have some broad stuff?
I still have some like major notes.
Okay, go.
I mean, I don't want this to be like a 9-hour episode. We should probably just break off we should probably just have an AI episode and just like extract some of this AI talk from this episode into.
Okay, how about this? I was thinking about if this was a Jacob's Ladder scenario. What if this was all in her head? And what does it mean when AI hallucinates?
Yeah, so I thought about that at the reveal, and I thought about, because there's the moment where she like kind of wakes up and he's like, you're a robot and you killed everybody. And there's a lot of like thematic gaslighting happening. They're like, the film does address gaslighting, especially the dinner table scene. You know, like he tries to do that. And I was thinking a much cleverer movie and a much less fun movie potentially, but a much cleverer movie would play with the idea of is she, isn't she? You know, which would be solved the moment her arm got ripped off or whatever. But there's like Rick and Morty episodes like that. You know, there's the one where like Summer opens up her chest and there's robots and she's like, fuck, we're clones or whatever. But yeah, I thought that could be an interesting way, but a different movie, you know, not a fun slapsticky dark comedy.
Right. I have another question around AI. So if we had murder bots, and I'm thinking about the emotional capacity of these companions, right? So the companions are driven by artificial intelligence to love. But what if we, as we were talking about before, we have murder bots?
Yeah.
Do we program them to hate? Does hatred make an intelligence a more effective killer? Is it better to have a cold-hearted killer, or does the passion of the emotion of hatred engineer more effective murder?
I think that's an interesting question because it's another sort of like weird little plot hole is like Patrick's aggression is up to 100, right?
Yeah. Which is a really vague metric. Like aggression.
Yeah. And so he's not like enraged and hulking out and running around and being like hyper aggressive. Like, for example, my fucking dog is aggressive.
Yes.
And like when she's trying to murder me, her aggression is up to like 100 and there's like no reasoning at all. Whereas he does this sort of like very literal, you know, monkey paw death, like stop her, he stabs her.
Right.
You know,
it's not aggression, it's capacity for violence.
Or it's like can kill, won't kill. It's almost binary,
okay.
You know, and then it's how literally adhering to the statement of the person and how much intent is there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that this film solves it in any sort of like satisfying way.
I'm just thinking you've got 100 human soldiers, you've got 100 murder bots, and then you've got another 100 murder bots. You got 100 regular soldiers against 100 murder bots that have no emotion versus 100 murder bots that are programmed to hate with the degree to which Iris loves.
Yeah, I think
who's going to win this battle royale?
Two things, right? Like one is, are you like having a Mandingo fight, you know, and then like
what's that?
Like in the slave fights in what's the movie?
I have never seen a slave fight.
Did you not see Django Unchained?
I did.
Yeah. So there's like the fight. They're like fighting their slaves. It's like one of the darkest parts of the movie.
Yep.
And they're like, one of them is like madder at the other one. You know, like being angry in a fight does not necessarily mean you win. There's like all kinds of like really like hilarious UFC knockouts where the guy's like, you know, like there's
beautiful supercuts on YouTube.
Yeah, there's a ton, right? So like maybe you want the aggression turned up maximum for humor, or like not humor, but entertainment. It's humorous
for degradation of the enemy.
Well, for entertainment, you know, like just like you want maximum WWE.
Yeah.
But I don't think for war it would be effective because think about like they give drone assassins beta blockers.
Right.
You know, I think just practically, just from, you know, listening to all kinds of fucking Navy SEAL videos, like you want like in war. Okay, what's the scenario? Is it murder bot versus murder bot? Then it's a chess program and it's tactics. It's like, you know, it's like Deep Blue versus whatever other chess program, and they're just working out on the battlefield. And then say you're humans versus the robots. What's scarier, them going, get some, or just a silent horde coming towards you? That's way more terrifying in my opinion.
Very true.
You know?
Okay. Cold-hearted killers.
Yeah. But, you know, then like why the terror there, the horror element is like, well, why are they doing that? Is it to like genocide a population? Is it to protect a border? Like what's going on in that scenario?
Oh, what else we got?
So, you know, one note here is like the IT workers, I think are a really interesting element of this because they add some humor to it. I think there's also an element of world building, and that, you know, there's a lot of like Geek Squad schlubs in this world. You know, there's like 5 people that come in and set this thing up. Like one dude came with my washer and dryer to my house, you know? So it seems like there's some sort of economy around this that has not eliminated labor. Like why wouldn't you just send robots to bring you the robots? Wouldn't that be kind of like a cost-effective way of doing that? Instead, you have these like, maybe there's some sort of
Unless you need the human touch.
Yeah, maybe there's some sort of works program or something like that, or whatever. I love like the conversation because it's sort of like the two IT workers are the only people in the film that really discuss philosophically what's going on. And to me, there's like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern moment, kind of.
Totally. I also really appreciate the one of them just sort of going like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. As soon as he gets in private, he's like, oh yeah, I totally fucking hacked this thing.
Yeah. I love that that's like a thing that they would be aware of, and that he plays it in like the perfect like customer service way.
Yes.
He's kind of like, oh yeah, no sweat, bro. And they get out, and just to get out of there.
Yeah.
And then there are also, tools of exposition. Like actually the hard drive is in the belly area.
Right.
But
they should have put it in the heart. They should have put it in the chest, not the belly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
You hold memories.
Yeah, totally.
The same place you love.
Totally. But okay, so the holding of the memories though, so these things are just collecting massive amounts of data all the time. And so could essentially like spy on you, and we already have that problem now. Like, for example,
I'm worried about the 7 devices in this room monitoring everything I'm doing already.
And you absolutely should. I mean, there is a court case. This woman went to jail and she's going to do time because she was seeking an abortion for her daughter or something like that. She's in Oklahoma or something like that. One of these like backwards ass no abortion states. And the fucking law subpoenaed her Facebook messages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, well, you're just like typing in Facebook or whatever. To me, this is like nuts. Like the people who are like using their open AI chat GPT as their therapist. Fuck that.
That's crazy.
Like you're in there like spilling your darkest secrets so that some chat GPT model can kind of like give you a meditation plan or something, whatever. Like, but like you're just dumping all this personal shit into this model that you don't know anything about the security protocols. I mean, and to Meredith Whittaker, my favorite person ever now, the president of Signal, a rhetoric department graduate, which is
really?
Yeah. She's like, she was there like
that.
It's interesting. She's very cagey about her age in like a classic like lady way.
Yeah.
Like, cause there's a moment where an interviewer is like, oh, women of our age. It's just, she's like, shh, because she's kind of like a Jewish lady sort of deal.
Right.
So listeners, I would definitely go listen to interviews with Meredith Whittaker because she's exactly what teachers in the rhetoric department sound like if they were in charge of a tech company. And you should definitely be using Signal for any sort of communication because it's actually encrypted.
For how long?
So their deal is like, it seems to be as good as it gets unless somebody like really, really cracked it, but there's nothing to crack. Like they're just like passing this message between devices. Famously, Tucker Carlson claimed that the State Department got wind of his Putin interview ahead of time and tried to stop it
through Signal,
but that's not what happened. Like I really looked I went super deep on this. The chances are they simply hacked his phone device and had been like watching it and just recording everything off of it. So they just got everything. And so they didn't hack Signal. They hacked the interface of looking at Signal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Pretty dark.
Yeah.
But, there's like that company that Israel pays a bunch of money to that can basically break anything that's like less encrypted than that. So pretty much anything that has like a backdoor to it, like a law enforcement backdoor, can be broken by these like NSA protocols and programs.
Wow.
Yeah. Dark stuff, man. Super dark stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know why I brought up Meredith Whittaker other than my mild crush on her.
Oh, really?
I remember when
Does she dress like the Steve Jobs lady wannabe?
Elizabeth Holmes,
Does she dress like Elizabeth Holmes?
Previous tech crush. No, I would say Meredith Whittaker's look is a little bit more like an all black cyberpunk version of Marissa Tomei and My Cousin Vinny, mostly because of her like white streak in her hair and stuff.
That's so weird.
Yeah, so which is totally, I don't mean to like sexualize this awesome tech person, but it's just a look that I find personally attractive. But I also find like the super brilliance and the sort of rhetoric department style of talking about things to be very compelling. I mean, I remember like I was going to be an English major when I was transferring to Berkeley, and I just went to Berkeley, and the rhetoric department was just hosting one of those come find out about the rhetoric department. And there were like 3 students that were like kind of similar. I wouldn't be surprised if like somebody she went to school with, but these 3 students were like talking rhetoric style talk, and I was transfixed by the insanity of it.
Yeah.
And also love that like some parents got up with their kids and walked out of the room during the talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, like people they'll be the occasional commenter on one of her videos. So they'll be like, oh, what does she know? She's not a technical person. She's a rhetoric department person. And I'm like, actually, it's like this meta skill that gives you the ability to like spot power imbalance in pretty much anything and understand like the root argument of what's going on. It's a great degree to have done. And she got into working at Google for like 10 years around the same time that I had an interview at Google. And I didn't know that this was going on, but they hired up a bunch of like high-level humanities majors to just sort of like culture the place up a little bit. And then what I really liked was her path in tech was not like mine at all, but I really appreciate the moxie of what she did, which is like she would just go to meetings and take notes and just try to be in. She was like a real go-getter in the organization and was basically rolled up, which is exactly the creepy billionaire Chris Hackett's approach to how he got super rich.
Yeah. Funny, you were talking about using Google as a therapist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a lot of, maybe not a lot, but a number of apps that are providing services for therapists, for psychotherapy clients, etc. They're just not charging enough to make me believe anything other that they are also data mining. They're data mining the clients and they're data mining the therapists, which is, it's funny. I was in a group supervision and just sort of put it out there like, hey, any of you have any experience with these? Because, it's a really good way to like organize your notes, organize your clients. And this woman sort of pointed out, I do not trust those fucking people. No fucking way. Nobody gets access to my work. Nobody gets access to my clients. And I thought that was, a very simple, just in this instance, like, just don't.
Yeah. I mean, she's right. The problem is the trade-off is, do you get lazy and let it do your notes? Because it does a pretty good job,
Well, personally, just as my thing is, I would not let AI do my notes because for me, writing is thinking, and I want to write the notes because it helps me process the information. It helps me process what my experience was. So I do understand that it can be a real boon to a lot of people to get their progress and process notes in line to just like have something sort of round all the corners for them. But for me, I need that process to actually do a better job. Because if I don't write it down, it's just part of the murky cloud of nonsense in my head compared to something that I have documented.
Yeah, I think reliance on these tools, there are already studies showing that it's just making you dumber. And it makes total sense. Like people used to be able to read maps and get around from memory. The London taxi driver study, for example, like when London taxi drivers retire, their brains literally shrank because they're not using that skill anymore. Having AI do your writing and note taking for you is diminishing your creative and critical thinking skills. It just is. It's happening, and you can do MRIs and see it happening. So it's a fact. And then one of the things that AI peddlers will really sort of cheer about is like, oh, it helps you get over the blank page. And for sure, sometimes you're like, oh, I just need to send this email off. That's fine. But in my opinion, struggling against a blank page is what makes you a creative person. It is what makes me paid an absurd amount of money, is that like me versus somebody else, you're going to get something that is effective and different instead of just simply effective.
Yeah.
And that's worth paying for. And when you're using like a machine trained on plagiarism that homogenizes and is nerfed, you can get a result. It's actually this business I want to start called fast food content. And it's basically like, you just might need a cheeseburger for your content, right? Like, and so I would just like AI write like 50 articles for you for like $1,000, and then I edit them so that they're better than just AI slop.
Yeah.
So investors taking seed round now, Series A. Well, here's, I think, where that seems like a very running out of steam, which is usually when we ask the question, would you have one of these robots?
As a companion?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I I am not taking the high road here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also not the type of person that would hire a prostitute, right?
You ain't got to pay for it. Oh.
No. The fuck? No, I just mean like, and that's not a moral argument.
Oh.
I just don't love and sex and friendship and things like that. I don't relate to them in a way where I want them to be filtered through an economy in such a raw way. Everything's an economy. Everything's as power exchange, but it's so brazen, and I don't think I would find it pleasurable. Maybe there's an alternate life where I'm like, oh, I'm in Nevada. I'll check this out, but I sort of don't get it. It doesn't, there's zero draw for me there. Yeah. I think there's an extended question here, which is like, if you were a billionaire, would you like just hire hot hookers every night? Like, I don't think I would. So would you?
Fucking 1,000% I would have one of these sex robots.
Really?
Yeah. For first of all, it's not just about having a sex robot. You're not cleaning, you're not doing laundry, it's doing Michelin level food for you all the time.
Okay, I'm sorry. I would, if it was just a maid or a butler, yeah, would I want a really dexterous Roomba? Like, of course.
I guess in this scenario, would you want to have Iris in your home?
No. I think about it the way I think about social media. Like, do you want access to all of your friends at your fingertips at all times and you can just connect with anybody at the world at any time? No, I fucking don't. It is terrible. The reality of it undermines your sense of self, undermines your identity, undermines your actual capacity to have friendships and interactions. It's degrading, it's atrophying the parts of individuals and culture that it is replicating, and like a pox on the people who developed and profit from this shit. And I think that this is the same thing with a companion. Would I want a really capable Roomba? Yeah, totally. Is it my companion? Absolutely not. To replace other human beings with a robot would fuck you up so badly.
Okay. Here's another scenario.
Aye.
I'm still hard to disagree on this, but
Okay.
What if it was in your polycule and you got a spotless house,
Right.
awesome food,
Yep.
all the benefits of having somebody do all the stuff you wouldn't want. It fixes your house, could basically do whatever you. To me, I would have that intelligence up to 100,
Right.
all the time.
Right.
Just figure some shit out. And when your wife wasn't interested, you have an option. That sounds great to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But okay, yes. Part of wife not being interested is good for you, and it's good for your negotiation of the relationship. And that dynamic is a tale as old as time, and it's part of what it means to be human. It's part of what it means to be in a heterosexual relationship or any relationship. You're always negotiating difference. You're always negotiating across the chasm of self and other. And a companion collapses that difference where let's take the inshitification version of the companion off the table for a moment. And let's
literally
say
Iris.
like it is totally maximized for your pleasure. I think that your relationship to capital O other ends up becoming collapsed.
I think though, I think where we might be differing here is you're thinking of like maximized for pleasure. I'm thinking of maximized for companionship. So just not just like, I think having sex with the robot is certainly a draw. Like obviously people would be into it. I would certainly try it out, but you get all this other stuff. And the fact that she actually loves you puts her in the territory of being more like your dog. Like my dog fucking loves me, I'm stoked on that. There's no negative reciprocation from that.
Right, but it is an independent entity in the world.
But so is she in this film. There's just like guardrails on it that the government put on that you can jailbreak.
Right. Okay, so here's a distinction. There is Iris from the movie and what the Iris from the movie is a representation of.
Yeah.
Because Iris from the movie is actually the charming Sophie Thatcher. It's a real person, right? She's not a companion. She's a real person. She's played by a real person. We're watching an actress do this. We're not watching a CGI fabricate human emotion, right?
Yeah. But you could also spice it up by jailbreaking her and having Wind in the Hair driving the Mustang companion if you wanted.
What does that change?
Just like, here's some more agency, break the phone, you're on your own.
But again, I think there's a distinction to be made here. If it's Iris from the movie, well, then we're just talking about a human being. Like, actually, she is a human being.
Not, like,
but if Iris from the movie was in reality, like, yeah, an AI-driven robot that you rent and all that, it would 100% be the dystopian, self-inflicted horror that I'm describing.
But what about the possibility of, like, Eli and Patrick, where they're both like, I actually love you, and then it's great.
Which one's Eli? Which one's Guillermo?
Eli.
Yeah. Guillermo.
I was so stoked the moment he walked on screen. I was like, oh my God, this guy fucking rules. I love this
movie even more.
Yeah. And actually, I even like whatever Quaid he is in The Boys. I think he's quite funny in that show.
Yeah.
I like all these actors.
Totally.
Yeah.
Eli, I think, is a fucked up person. Not because he's in love with a robot. He is a fucked up person. No, I'm just kidding.
Obviously a joke, people. Perhaps we should restart this so later on if you feel squeamish about this comment.
I'm leaving it in. I didn't say it.
But you laughed really hard.
I laughed harder than you. Yeah. There is a bit of this movie where their relationship is framed as this beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. It's not. And it's not because one of them is a robot. It's not because the entire thing is a sham. Eli is living in a fantasy world. He is living in a world where the part of his psyche that craves love and affection is being propped up by technology.
Yeah. I guess like my read on this is like maybe how we're interacting, how we're perceiving these characters is a little bit different. Like to me, these are just alive people, kind of like, and it probably has to do with like a lifetime of mainlining sci-fi into my brain. So to me, it's a little bit more like, would you like a robot girlfriend is in the territory of, would you like a Romanian girlfriend? It's just a different type of girl, sort of thing, except for the superhuman robot abilities that allow them to do all this stuff really well. It's like, that to me is what's appealing about it. Yeah. And then, to the relationship between Eli and Patrick, one of the things I really think is rad, one, they're using the gay relationship, like it sort of like conceals the twist a little bit, because you're not thinking, you're just thinking like Stepford Wives robot girl. Totally. You're not even like, not being gay. I'm not even thinking of like a dude version of it, which obviously would exist, but I think it does a neat little thing because so much of the movie is kind of, there's a lot of like shitty boyfriend, girlfriend done wrong sort of energy in it, which is great. But it also, it's not just heterosexual relationships that are shitty and fucked up. Like it sort of has that kind of element to it, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Not interesting. It's just like, it's just there.
It gives it depth.
It gives it depth. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I like that it made references to a lot of films, but it didn't feel crammed or ham-fisted. Yeah, the reference to the Stepford Wives and T2 and all that. Like it didn't feel like, oh Jesus Christ, this whole thing.
They weren't member berries. They were just like style elements.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was also kind of cool. I personally love the like middle class retrofuturism a little bit of her, Yeah. And then, probably was just made this movie affordable, but the setting of the lake house is, to me, that was one of the least believable elements is like an oligarch with a girl on the side is not letting her friends come over for the weekend.
Wait, say that again?
So Sergey,
Yeah.
they make him out to be like an oligarch. He's
Yeah.
got $12 million in a safe. He owns the entire everything around a lake. So presumably he's like in billionaire territory.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend is, his side piece. It's like explicit in the film. Like, you're not letting your side piece bring your buddies over to your lake house. I don't think so. Yeah.
Especially if one of them's bringing over something you can fuck.
But you would have just gone on Amazon and gotten one of those if you were that interested.
That's true.
Or maybe not. It's kind of like the guy is sort of like Russian boomer coded a little bit. He's like, come talk to an older Russian man. So like the age difference, like maybe
the age difference of like 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he looks more like the Gogo Bordello guy than he does like than
totally
anything
does.
else. Yeah, I think that character gets. I think it is unjust what happens to that character in the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is it's again.
This is the most uncomfortable part to defend.
Absolutely. Again, because we are so on her side.
Yeah.
And I think we find sexual assault against women so viscerally distasteful that even if it's actually he's trying to sexually assault my laptop, it feels like this horrifying transgression.
Yeah, it's like, from his perspective, it's basically the who jerked off on my magazine scene from This Is the End.
Oh my God.
Like it's that sort of like, it's just a degree of technicality of what this thing is.
Right.
It could be Danny McBride's magazine or James Franco's magazine rather, or, whatever. But
that was a remarkable callback, or callback to a previous episode.
Yeah. But there are people who don't like seeing the Boston Dynamics dog robot get kicked, and it doesn't really look like a dog, and its sole purpose is to come kill you. Like that's what it's made for. Like there's it's doing like cute little dog tricks, but that's because they don't want you to think about like that its actual job is to run into a tunnel and murder everyone in it.
Right.
I could totally see somebody being like, look, it's just a sexual assault. Like it's fucked up, whatever. But in the world of the film, I don't think it would be like a capital offense, like in just the rule, like the Asimov rules of robotics, he would not have been killed by her because,
Right.
And also I do like the kind of like, he's like, my hands are very dirty. And it's because he's actually
literally a
dirt farmer. And so I was like, oh, it's a kind of mobilizing this sort of like very modern, well, not modern, but it's been on a few years now, but like this Russophobia that's just sort of in the air, whenever you see. I thought it was really interesting. And I thought about it was when he takes off his shirt and she's like rubbing the lotion on him, he has no tattoos. So I was like, so to me, I was like, he is not a criminal because he doesn't have he doesn't have the.
Oh, that's another reveal. That's good.
Yeah.
Or foreshadowing.
Or whatever. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Something else I sort of perceived is the thing we talk about a lot about how we set horror movies in the past because everybody has cell phones now, and horror movies and thrillers, you have to isolate someone in order to attack them. And if they have a phone, it's harder. And this movie, one of its plot holes we've already discussed is that it's not sharing information instantly. It's not hooked up to Wi-Fi.
Except for it is like sort of, and this is when the car gets stopped. They report the car is stolen and it gets shut down remotely.
Well, the car is, but that has nothing to do with her.
Well, she also disables that on the phone because she's jailbroken. It's one of the consequences of being jailbroken is that she can't be shut down remotely.
Oh, I was thinking more about surveillance, constant monitoring. Is that because this movie makes these things such that aside from, that instance you're describing, it's all just recorded to a solid state drive in her belly. It takes off the table the potential that she becomes remote. She is a woman running for her life in the forest alone. But it makes even less sense. If she was a real woman, you'd have to get the cell phone away from her for her to be able to be helpless and alone. But she's a piece of machinery that should actually have access to the airwaves.
Yeah, this is where like when you like think too hard about it, it
Yeah.
sort of like diminishes your enjoyment of the
Yeah.
film. Like, you know, for example, her intelligence is up to 100 and she like doubles back to the cabin.
Yeah,
Now,
it's a bad
imagine
choice.
the woman from The Hunt, you know,
Yes.
they're not catching her with robot powers and 100% IQ.
No.
You know, she's going to murder all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's an enjoyable movie. Like, it's one of those movies that you would. I mean, this is a long fucking episode that goes all over the place.
It's longer than the movie.
Yeah, it's probably longer. It's longer than the movie, which is absurd. We should definitely edit this down a lot. Yeah, it's fun to think about robots, and maybe just for me, I'm thinking about robots since I was a little kid. You know, it's like my favorite shit.
Yeah. So what have we learned?
Don't borrow someone's fleshlight without asking them.
You can email us at whatthe@scarythoughts.org. And thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to go grab a beer and turn on the lights.